Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Be Heard Women Empowering Women. And as you know, I seek out these women, and they are plentiful, more than you would think. Accomplished women who have had to go through their own obstacles to get where they are today. And today we have Dr. Abbey Shulkin, who is a master acupuncturist, herbalist, fitness instructor, and nutritional consultant. And Dr. Abbey specializes in the treatment of Parkinson's disease, and she is also a very skilled source for talking about eating disorders. So we're going to try to cover those two today. Hi, Dr. Abbey. How are you?
Good, Mimi. How are you?
Good. Are you nervous? Is this your first
A
podcast?
little bit.
Is this your first?
Yes, it is.
That's it. Oh, it's
Mhm.
easy. It's just a conversation. So, Dr. Abbey was in Boca and I live in West Palm Beach, and we got together through a mutual friend, and she sounded very interesting. So I did want to talk to her. So let's talk about the eating disorder, because in my recovery, when I gave up alcohol, I picked up food. So I totally get that. And it's all about needing to control something, I think. And so I had gone to rehab for 28 days for alcohol and pills. And 9 months later, I had gained 50 pounds because I substituted. And then I went to a place for eating disorders, and I went for 3 weeks. And my husband said, "Are you going to go away every year?" And I said, "I'm going to do whatever it takes." Right? So tell me your experience with eating disorders. Let's start there.
Well, I think I come from a long line of people with eating disorders.
Mm.
As a child, I saw my mother uh, constantly growing larger and larger. So my mother was like a pure compulsive overeater,
Mhm.
and I had those tendencies also. But at one point, I decided I didn't want to be overweight because I wanted to get attention from men.
Mhm.
So I tried all kinds of things to control my weight, but
Mm.
I never had like an example of how to eat normal and healthy.
Yeah.
So I started making all these crazy diets for myself. And that began like some yo-yo of binging and starving, binging and purging, binging and compulsive exercise,
Mhm.
binging and laxative. So I was on this terrible roller coaster from the time I was 12. And at 16, I had like a suicide attempt
Oh,
because I thought I was crazy. Because
yeah.
back in the 70s, people didn't talk about eating disorders. It wasn't
No.
like a thing,
No.
but I definitely had one.
Mhm.
So I ended up going to all kinds of therapists and psychiatrists and stuff.
Mm.
But
Mm.
I went to doctors. Was checked. I was not crazy. There was nothing physically wrong with me, only I could not stop obsessing about my weight
Mhm.
and this crazy eating thing.
And in the
So,
70s, let me just say, I want to segue there. In the 70s, there was a big impact and focus on your body. I mean, there are all kinds of exercise gurus out there. Remember Jane Fonda and Simmons, and they had all the exercise tapes. And what was the diet thing? They had diet shakes and everything. Do you remember that? How much they focused on your body then?
well, I don't know any better because I was born in the late 60s.
Oh, okay,
So
I'm older than you.
I
Okay,
was,
well, I'll let you know that's true. And that's when I think it first got to that point of focusing on the body instead of the person. It was right around the 70s. That's when it ballooned. Women were always concerned about how they looked, of course, but it was never focused on like it started to be in the 70s. So how you said 12. You were 12 when you started focusing on food, right? Yeah. So
yeah.
what happened then after
So
all this stuff? How'd you finally break the cycle?
Okay. So I was living in New York City and I was going to college, and a girl in my dorm, I think she noticed me throwing up in the bathroom,
Uh-huh.
and she came up to me, asked me if I was okay. And she said she had the same thing, but she had found help for it. So I was like, where? And she led me to this place. It
Mhm.
was what is called a therapeutic community in the middle of Manhattan, of all places. And
Mhm.
I have to laugh when I hear people say, I went away for 28 days or
Yes,
18 days,
yes.
because I was in there. First, I went like as an outpatient, and I went to some 12-step programs, but I
Mhm.
still couldn't stop. And
Mm.
so I ended up going inpatient, and I was inpatient for literally a year. The
Ah,
first 6 months, they would not let me out of that place by myself
that's what
because
I was
made,
wondering.
yeah, I
Okay.
would have made a beeline to
Right. How
the
did you support yourself though? If you couldn't work, right? You weren't working. You were in this
my
facility.
grandmother,
Okay.
who
Your
loved me
grandmother.
dearly, knew I had a problem.
Yeah,
My
good,
grandma,
good. Good old grandma. We're
well,
always there. Okay. So 6 months, you didn't leave at all. And then they start letting you out, a little bit. What happened next?
well, um, well, it was very weird in the facility, let me tell you,
Okay.
because I was afraid to eat like 3 normal meals a day,
Hmm.
because I was sure I was going to get as fat as my mother if I did that.
Hmm.
But I had to learn to eat 3 meals a day. And
Mm.
there were a lot of young men in the facility too, because
Yeah.
it was for drug addicts. So I had to eat these meals with these gorgeous young men also. That was a struggle.
I can
Yeah,
imagine.
it was a real struggle. So, but I
Yeah.
just did it because I did not have a choice,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But I did learn a lot of other things, like it changed my behavior being in this therapeutic community. Before I went there, I was just a chaotic mess without any structure. I was a kid from the 70s. I was a latchkey kid, and
Mhm.
my mother was a chaotic mess. So I never learned, like, get up, make your bed, wash your clothes, sweep the floor. I
Mhm.
never learned any of that stuff.
Mhm.
So, but in this therapeutic community, I learned to like try to keep myself organized and try to work against the chaos in my life.
Yeah.
And that's a skill that I still employ today,
Yeah.
because I feel like it's a control issue, like you mentioned earlier, but I feel
Mhm.
more control when my environment is organized.
Yeah.
So that's one way I stop myself from crazy eating, is I'm so focused on let's try to make order out of chaos instead of chaos out of order. So
Right.
I'm always into organizing myself. I feel better when I'm organized.
Oh, I'm the same
And
way. Yeah, I'm the same way. But let me ask you, so how long are you, in AA, it'd say clean and sober. So how long are you free from this disorder of eating the wrong way?
I I'm in recovery
Yes.
for just about 38 years.
Okay, good. And have you had relapses?
I have not,
Oh, my
knock
heavens,
on wood,
wonderful.
it took me 3 years to get it.
Okay.
Even after being in the therapeutic community,
Yeah,
even after being in 12-step meetings.
right. Yeah.
And I have attended a lot of the A's, because at one point I was fortunate enough to move to Europe, and they
Hmm.
didn't have any food focused 12-step meetings.
Hmm.
So I had to go to the alcohol focused one
Uh-huh.
because it was English and it was close to my house. But
Yeah.
there are so many parallels with the
Yeah.
way I ate.
And the
Like,
way they
I know
drink.
it's the same thing,
Yeah,
only
because you're self-medicating. That's what I found out because the first treatment center that I went to, and I stayed sober, it's 34 years. God, 34 years. And I found out there that I had chronic depression and anxiety disorder from my dysfunctional family, from the husbands I had before that were abusive, etc., and whatever chemical makeup in my body, it all combined. So I had been self-medicating all these years. Instead of taking an antidepressant, I was drinking, right? So I think whether it's AA or ED, it doesn't matter. Like usually the causes and the reasons are all the same. You know, you're trying to stuff feelings down. Do you agree with that? Not to feel.
Because a funny thing happened when I tried to put down the food and eat like a normal person. All these feelings came up and I started crying and I could not stop crying. I would go to the therapy groups and I would start crying. And then at one point I moved to Paris and I kept going to meetings. There are English speaking meetings in Paris. And I was at this apartment of this American woman who lived right next to that park near the Eiffel Tower. And it was springtime in Paris.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I was at an afternoon meeting and I started bawling. I could not stop crying. Somebody, and the woman, the American woman, was living in this beautiful apartment next to the Eiffel Tower with a French doctor. So she called him like, she can't stop
This
crying.
hysterical woman.
I couldn't stop crying. So one of my friends took me home in a cab, crying because there was so much emotion stuffed down, and it was like taking the cork off a champagne bottle. And all the emotions came up, but I survived the emotions. I'm still here to talk about them. But crying is a good, right? Especially when you do it for others.
I've cried a lot in therapy. Yeah, I've done group therapy, I've done one-on-one, I've done inpatient, and there's so much to work on. And even when you think that you've done the work, you know, years can go by, and all of a sudden there's a trigger. And for me, I was 5 years sober, and I got triggered. I don't even know what did it, but I went into very bad depression. And I went to a place, Karen Foundation has a place in Warren, Pennsylvania, and they do family of origin work. And I'll tell you, Dr. Abbey, it's wonderful because they only take 6 people at a time. And it's only for a week. But because it's only 6 people, they do this powerful role-playing exercises where one person stands in as your father or whatever. I never let so much out of my life. I had to scream, and I screamed, and I cried, and it was still stuff that had to come up, you know. So I know for you, those first few years had to be very difficult, correct? The first 3.
Yes. And even though I changed, my family didn't change.
No.
And
exactly.
Yes. And they were still really sick. And that is why I had to be on the other side of the ocean from them. Because I need that space to recover. But it's funny. I recently heard of that family work from a friend of mine.
Oh yeah, it was fantastic. And in our family, when I got sober, we had 3 girls and a stepson, and I offered all of them the opportunity to go into treatment. They were teenagers, and 2 of the girls said yes, and the stepson and my oldest daughter said no, thank you. And all these years later, the 2 daughters that wanted help, they needed help on their journey. They are both counselors. One is a psychologist with her own practice, and the other one is a counselor for the VA in Wilmington, North Carolina. So it even became part of their career path, right? But they still have their ups and downs. But I am so thankful that I got sober when I did, because then I could be like an example for them. Do you know what I mean? Like your mother, like it's not an example, you know, but they saw what I did and they did what they did. I'm very proud of that. So family, yeah, that's a big part of everybody's life. And we can't, disown our families. They're our families. And they are the ones that usually trigger us, in my opinion. And the holidays are coming up. What about holiday triggers with food? What advice do you have, if any?
Okay, so my disease of compulsive overeating doesn't take a holiday. It
No.
doesn't matter if it's Christmas, New Year's,
Mm-hmm.
Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
I still have this disease, and I need to do what I know works for me,
Yeah.
which is stick to my 3 meals a day. And I
Yeah.
personally don't eat sugar because that triggers me to binge.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Thanksgiving, I have to figure it out. I eat my 3 moderate meals, and I
Yeah.
don't eat sugar. So that is where that is, and that's what
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what day.
Yeah.
But it
Holidays.
is
Yeah.
rough because it's a double whammy. There's a lot of food around, and you're with family, and there's always like some dynamics.
Some drama going.
You don't have to. There is something you can say. It starts with an N and it ends with an O.
And it's a full
No,
sentence. And it's a
right.
full
You
sentence.
can say no. You can say no to going to people's house you don't enjoy.
Exactly.
You can say no to
Exactly.
food that you don't want.
Exactly.
It's your life. You don't have to please
I
anybody. You
know.
don't owe anybody anything.
Yeah.
Do what is right for you. If
Yes.
your family made you so sick that you become a substance abuser and need treatment, you don't owe them to show up at their
No.
damn little Thanksgiving
No.
thing. Go
No.
to
Yeah.
your friend.
Yeah.
Go to, you
Well,
know,
I have the luxury of living a lot far away because I'm in Florida and they're in Pennsylvania. So I don't have that too often. And I love my children and my grandchildren. But there's always a dynamic going on. The more people that are involved in the room, let's say, the chances are somebody is going to be unhappy. So, what I did want to get to also is I wrote my book, my first book was called Raised by Wolves, Trapped by Demons, because the wolves were my parents who, like your parents or mother, did not teach you any skills, any coping skills. Now, in my case, my parents taught me to work. They wanted me to work. They didn't want me to go to college. They wanted me to stay home and make money for them. So that's why I call them the wolves. And to escape from them, every door got closed, and I ended up, which a lot of women did, getting married. That was the escape hatch to get married. And then, of course, it was abusive and on and on and on. And I kept making decisions and doing things, but for every good decision I made a bad decision. I was young. I was in my 20s. So it took me quite a few years to, they call it hit a bottom. And so the second half of that title, Trapped by Demons, the demons represented by the men, but also the demons that were in my psyche. That's where the counseling and the therapy and the treatment comes in, right? So there's so many women out there today that still have abusive relationships and deal with it by overeating, eating disorder or drinking or whatever. But I'm glad you're here to talk about it. And you've there's so much about you because also you pursued Oriental medicine and studied, right, different alternative ways of healing. Is that correct? Yeah, tell us about
yes.
that. Yeah, tell me about that. That sounds interesting.
Well, can I backtrack for a
Oh, yeah,
second
go ahead. Yes.
about
Anytime.
men? Because
Yeah.
I have some experience with men and I've
Mm,
talked to many women. And this is just what I want to say to the women out there. Never be with a man when you don't have an out.
mm,
Because if you are with an abusive man, that's when the abuse typically starts, when you don't have a way out and the man knows this.
yes, it's so
He
true.
knows he has you trapped.
They
And
cut you off from your family. That's number one. They don't want you to be with your family. They don't want you to work. I mean, this is what I experienced. they make you just isolate it from everyone but them. You're so right on that. You got that. So
Yeah, so always make sure you have
yeah.
an out, that you
Yeah.
have your own money, you have
Mhm.
a place to go,
Absolutely.
that you are not 100% dependent on this man.
Yeah. And
I,
they did not have women's shelters and all that stuff when I was going through abuse in the 70s and into the 80s. They didn't have that. But I still survived, and I talk about that in the books. I'm not going to talk about it here. But they have a lot of resources today for women that are in that situation. So tell me, you lived in the Netherlands for
yeah,
30
shall I tell you
years.
first about the Oriental medicine?
Yeah, yeah. Do that. We started that.
So I got interested in that
Yeah.
because I had a knee injury from doing step aerobics and running,
Hmm.
and it really helped my knee problem. And I was laying there on the table and I thought I would really love to learn more about this and be specialized in something like this. And then it's funny how life works, because at one point the opportunity to study Oriental medicine came up and I immediately said yes, even though it was like a 3-year study on top of all the bachelor degrees I have.
Yeah.
So I did it, and it wasn't never boring, not for a second. I
Oh,
find
boy.
it so interesting, and it helps with so many things. There are so many things that I can treat with Oriental medicine, from physical injuries to internal medicine. I'm going to just say like digestion, neurological things like the Parkinson's,
Hmm.
Alzheimer's, Bell's palsy,
Hmm.
to psychological things. Uh, we have herbal medicine to help people with schizophrenia,
Hmm.
and there's ways to help people with
Wow.
ADHD, and of course addiction. There's this
Yes.
famous thing called the NADA protocol,
Yeah.
and it's very good for relieving anxiety, depression, and helping diminish the withdrawal symptoms.
And you know
And
what? I found that um, medical doctors years ago who would poo-poo anything like that, they are now. I have had several of my medical doctors say, "Okay, I want you to try meditation, or why don't you do this?" It's amazing that they did do this. Even I'm trying to think of the one uh, lotion or whatever that I use for pain. I can't think of it right now, but I had my plastic surgeon tell me to use that. And so it's like a crossover, like they're starting to give credit where credit is due, right? They didn't like that
well,
before. They want to talk about that stuff. They wanted to give
typically I
credit.
get a lot of people, yeah, who have been to all kinds of doctors and they can't find any help.
Mhm.
They're done with all the Western doctors, and that's when they go to see their acupuncturist.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
yes, and I do have some MDs as patients.
Uh-huh.
And during my study for Oriental medicine, there were people who were MDs. There was a lady who was a surgeon, a retired orthopedic surgeon, who's studying Oriental medicine, who did Reiki on me. So you just don't know.
I've had Reiki,
But
I've had
uh,
acupuncture, and I not consistently, but I felt something each time that I didn't get from a regular doctor. So I really do believe that. Can we talk a little bit about Parkinson's? What is your experience there? It says you have some experience with that, in the treatment of Parkinson's disease.
my doctorate research project is on treating Parkinson's with acupuncture. I was an
Wow.
instructor for the Parkinson's Foundation while I was in acupuncture school. And I thought there must be some way that I can help people, my participants, with
Mhm.
the acupuncture. So I did as much research as I could, and I wrote a paper, and I came up with the best treatment plan for people with Parkinson's with acupuncture. And that's what I treat people with.
And what was
I've
the name
come
of
up
the
with
paper? Is that what it was called?
strategies for treating Parkinson's disease with acupuncture
Oh my
by
gosh. So
Dr. Abbey Jo Shulkin.
what do you do? Use it for the tremors, or how do you treat them with that?
Uh, okay, so Parkinson's, it's actually a disease in your brain with a lack of dopamine. So by using certain acupuncture points, it helps increase the amount of dopamine, which slows down the tremors and slows down the progression and makes it so that people can take less Parkinson's medication and have a better quality of life for a longer time, because that's what people want, of course.
And do you
It's
do
not a,
that currently? Are you doing that
yes, I
currently?
do.
And
Yeah,
you're, because I might come down and see you with my husband.
please do.
He had what's called deep brain surgery.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and he had the device and the wires attached to the part of the brain. It was very stressful day because you have to stay awake, of course, because they're dealing with your brain and they want to make sure they're in the right place when they attach those electrodes. And he's left-handed, and at the time, his left side was shaking terribly. And we were asked about it, and we decided yes, he would do it. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. That worked great for many years. It's been quite a few years now. And now his right side is going. And the neurologist asked him a couple of years ago if he wanted to do the right side. And we said no, one was enough, you know. And he, I see a deterioration, but he really is doing good because he's 12 years now since diagnosis, you know. And but it's a horrible disease. Parkinson's is one of
Yes,
the
it is. Yes, it is. You don't wish that on your worst enemy because it's a horrible disease.
yeah, yeah.
And it's,
Well,
yes.
it takes away your dignity in a way because, and we have our talks because I told him, listen, when I need to be, I'm your practical nurse. I'm here, but then I have my hat that says loving wife. Yeah, I keep them separate because it's something that you have to deal with, and we're handling it fairly well, very well. Yeah. So what
Yeah.
else do we
But
miss anything?
exercise
Exercise. He rides his bike. Yeah, not a real
is
bike.
very,
He was falling off the real bike. He loved riding his bike, but as the disease progressed, the balance, of course, gets bad. And he was falling off the bike a little too much. So I got a stationary bike, which he loves. And then he started to have a problem later on, progression, getting on and off that, he would fall. So I had a guardrail put up. So now when he goes to get her on or off, he holds onto the guardrail. So, you just have to do the next right thing. It helps. It helps. Yeah.
but definitely the acupuncture for Parkinson's really helps slow down the progression.
I'm going to
As
look
with
into
most people, you have to come consistently to get the
it.
best results. One
Hmm.
of the papers that I found actually
Hmm.
said they cured Parkinson's. I'm
Oh my.
skeptical,
That will, yeah.
but
Yeah.
I've treated patients and they have had quite a bit of relief, and it definitely slows it down so they can take less medication.
I'm definitely gonna look into that. We might be making an appointment before the week is out. So you have a master's degree in acupuncture, right?
And a doctorate degree.
Oh, a doctorate. See, wherever I got your history from is wrong. A doctorate. That's why you're a doctor. Doctor. Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, I think anything they can come up with is helpful. And my husband is a little stubborn. He doesn't want to do a lot of the things, but he does things that help him get through, you know. But it's hey, he's also sober, 34 years, so he's yes, yes, that helps. We don't need to drink. We fell down now sober. Right? Well, we
Yeah.
have so much we have to talk about. I think I'll have to book you again. And for your first podcast, you did wonderful.
Thank you. The time flew by.
It did. And was it easier than you thought?
Yes,
Yeah.
you
Well,
made
she's sort of
it.
hesitant on that one.
You
Yeah.
made it easy for me.
Yeah.
You really made me feel at ease.
Thank you. Thank you. That's my
I
job.
could,
Um, do you, when you read, do you use Kindle or do you use the old-fashioned way of reading? I have a reason for the question.
I do both, but I prefer those old school books.
Yeah,
So
you
I can
do.
throw them in I read
Yeah.
a lot when I'm traveling, like when I'm
Okay.
at the airport
Yeah.
or in a plane,
But the
and I
Kindle's
like to
on your
just throw
phone.
that.
You realize the Kindle's on your phone too, so you could read it off your phone. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send you my book as a Kindle, as an ebook. And then if you want to buy the
Okay.
paperback, you can. But I'm going to send that to you. And I had a lovely time talking to you, and the time did go by very fast. And next time we might just talk about Parkinson's and acupuncture. You know, you're schooled in so many things, you're knowledgeable about so many things. So we'll do that. Okay.
I focus on the Parkinson's
Yes.
because that's my area of expertise, but also I am having a challenge. The Monday after Thanksgiving, I'm doing a 5-day challenge. You can sign up on my group on Facebook.
Okay.
And this is to help kickstart people's recovery from eating disorders, be it binge eating disorder,
Where
believe me,
do they go on Facebook? What do they search?
it's called the Road to Recovery 5-day eating disorder challenge.
Okay. All right,
And I
everybody
will be,
listening out there, if you are having that experience, the Road to Recovery
yeah,
5-day eating disorder challenge on
yeah,
Facebook. Very good.
it,
Very good.
it's called the R4 method, which I created myself, where I combine my life experience, what I learned in the therapeutic community, what I know from the 12-step programs, and my Oriental medicine background. I rolled these in a ball
Mhm.
and I created a program. I have an 85-page workbook. And if people sign up, I also have a great PDF to help them create a food plan.
Yes.
And I will be not lecturing, I hate that word, but I will
Speaking.
be sharing my experience and answering questions and sharing stuff to help people stop binge eating. I'm going to be that person that I needed back then when I was
Yes.
hopeless. You talked about hitting the bottom, but
Mhm.
Mimi, I hit the bottom of the barrel and I scraped along that bottom for years because I could not find any help. And I
Yes.
want to help people not scrape along the bottom. There is hope. You do not have to live in that terrible, vicious, negative spiral
Yeah.
of binging and starving and hating yourself,
Oh,
because
yeah.
that's
Absolutely.
actually the root of it. Like thinking, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable,
Mhm.
people like me because this part of my body's not good, I'm not pretty enough,
This
whatever.
is why you and I are doing these things. The reason I have this podcast, of course, the title says it all, but there's no one there to guide me, no mentor or guide. And we're here now to do that. And I just this week came out with a workbook journal type book called Be Heard Women Empowering Women. And it has 12 antidotes and 12 steps. So, like you, I try to put together a little journal workbook type thing to help people. And it's all about self esteem and things like that. So, we're both sort of on the same road there. And that's good.
We
Yeah,
are. And I'm
we
sure
are.
with your 34 years in recovery that you have so much wisdom to share. Like,
Yeah.
how much stuff have you been through in the past
Oh
34
my.
years
Well,
and
when
made
you
it
read
through
the book, you'll
so
see. But the workbook I
yeah,
made,
so I'm sure.
yeah, and the workbook I made very inexpensive, like $10, because I want to help people. It's not about making money or anything. Thank you so much. This was wonderful. And I have to thank our friend for putting us together. And we will
Yes.
set something up after the holidays and do this again. Good?
Thank you for inviting me, Mimi. It was my pleasure.
Uh,
I'm here for anything that you need.
okay, thank you. It was wonderful. See you soon. Bye-bye.